morning, everyone. My name is Sallie McKibben. I'm an acupuncturist here at Sunnyside Collaborative Care, and I'm going to be talking today about Chinese herbs for endocrinology and cardiology. So I'm kind of just going to be doing a smattering of different herbs. I'm going to start kind of with adaptogenic kind of herbs and then go into ones that are helpful for diabetes, especially focused on edema and issues like that. And then go into herbs that are great for the heart. So, but before I begin, I have a decoction here that is of a single herb, and I'm going to put this in cups, hand it out, and we're going to have just a couple minutes of silence just to settle ourselves, go inside, kind of feel where you are in your body, and then we'll have a sip, and then we'll have another minute of silence. So that we can really feel what's happening. And then I want you to tell me what this herb does. So let's go ahead and have just 2 minutes of silence. So we'll start as soon as it reaches the top. So, or just as you're feeling what it's doing, we'll just take up a couple more minutes, or not minutes, but seconds. So now, if you can tell me kind of what you're experiencing, what you're noticing.
Very deep. I just feel like the brain sort of cooling, yin kind of cooling effect.
And my mind just stopped talking.
Yeah.
Got very quiet.
Very nice.
I got a little woozy. What is this stuff?
So this one is one of the herbs.
Slightly cooling.
Let's see. I should have put it as the first one. It's not actually this one. It's coming up though. So this one is actually Wujia-shen. It's Suja, Eleuthero. So it's not one that we use that much in Chinese medicine, but I've definitely learned a lot from Satya and how much it's used in naturopathic medicine. So I found that really interesting, and that research found a lot more about it after it wasn't used quite as much in Chinese. So it's a great adaptogenic herb, and it's slightly sedating, but greatly strengthening. So, and we'll talk more about that one later. I wanted to get this one in the beginning, because what I'm doing next is I have an entire formula. So we can see the difference between taking a single herb and taking an entire formula that contains that herb. So this is generally how we pack up our bulk herbs. Most Chinese formulas, of course, have a wide selection of herbs. And so I'm curious, is anyone else here an acupuncturist? You're an acupuncturist? Okay, so a lot of you, okay, are familiar.
Yeah.
Did you get one? There's some.
I'm old tongue back in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all that.
Get this one started.
I love doing herbs one at a time,
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
because I like to build a formula with the patient so I can see how they respond to each one. I do that with vitamins too.
Yeah,
I
correct.
like one at a time, because people react to stuff, especially my patients seem to be really sensitive.
Okay, so then I'm going to start with gansao, with licorice, which is sweet and neutral. It tonifies the spleen qi and moistens the lung. So for those of you not too familiar with Chinese medicine, tonifying the spleen qi is kind of more comparable to the pancreas, because it helps with digestion. It helps with kind of the muscles of the body. So it's kind of like good at regulating blood sugar in that way, and so helping with digestion and helping with kind of the functioning of the muscles of the body. And so it relieves pain, clears heat and toxin, and treats poisoning, harmonizes other herbs. So licorice is a major herb. It's used in a lot of our formulas in small amounts in order to harmonize them, in order to decrease toxicity of certain herbs. A lot of the the properties in here is from some things I've gotten from the Chun book, which is a great breakdown on research that's been done on these herbs, and gives a great breakdown on how they're working from a Western perspective. I also referred to the other textbook that was out here, the textbook of natural medicine, which is wonderful. Of course, it doesn't have too many Chinese herbs, but the ones that are in there, it's very thorough on, so it's fantastic. So, gansao can be used for declining pituitary function. It's generally used with Rinchen and Fusa for this, if there's an aversion to cold. It's also good for Addison's or insufficient adrenals, and it inhibits the breakdown of cortisol, aldosterone, and progesterone, and this is also the same reason why it can increase blood pressure. But in order to prevent that, it just needs to traditionally be taken with Fuling and Zeshie, which is poria and water plantain. So it can help prevent the accumulation of sodium in water. So it has estrogenic activity, but it also inhibits breast cancer cell growth. So the very same compounds that have estrogenic-like activity also prevent breast cancer. So that's pretty great. It might be as preventatively, but research has found so far that it is that it inhibits breast cancer cell growth. But since it does mimic estrogen, it might just be kind of like a safeguard to.
That'd be very mild mimic estrogen.
Yeah. So it reduces body fat and improves blood glucose control. The interesting thing I found about licorice is its use in naturopathic medicine for stomach ulcers and duodenal ulcers, because we don't generally think about it like that, although we would put it in formulas for digestive upset, gastritis, things like that. We don't usually think about it
That's
in
the
those terms.
deglycerized form usually that leads to DGL.
Yeah, it's
but
stronger.
It has an elevation in blood pressure. Even with deglycerized, it still has like 3%, or kind of like decaf and coffee still has some. So some people are taking high doses and their blood pressure went way up. So still a caution with that use. Yeah.
Oh, yes, and it is used for Zhangzhou disorder, for the dry organ disorder, which is, it's kind of comparable to panic attacks or for mania, kind of like this unstable energy that just feels kind of like, traditionally it says going to high places naked, wanting to sing. So that doesn't sound so terrible, but I guess if it can't be controlled, then Gansao with wheat and red jujubes, actually. So.
That's what you give to patients when you go through breakups. It's really well for that.
Yeah, that one I was also told there's a formula, Danshan and Tanxiang. So it's salvia and sandalwood, a combination that is good for heart pain, but it has also been called a heartbreak formula. And we'll talk about those herbs later. So Rinchen, ginseng, have to cover it. Of course, it tonifies the source qi, tonifies spleen, tonifies the lung, promotes generation of body fluids, and relieves thirst. So it's useful for diabetes. And that's the wasting and thirsting disease in Chinese medicine. That's the name for it, because you keep wanting to drink water, but you can't retain it, so you keep the thirst stays. Calms shun and improves mental functioning. Tonifies qi and blood, treats impotence, tonifies qi while assisting the immune system, the wei qi. It's weakened by tea, turnips, and daikon radishes. So if someone is just taking lots and lots of ginseng all the time and has an overdose, you can just tell them to go get a daikon radish. It stimulates the release of ACTH by the pituitary, and it's hypoglycemic. It reduces cholesterol. It has an interesting effect on blood pressure as small doses increase blood pressure, but large doses decrease. So, and large doses also have the opposite effect of stimulating the central nervous system. So it decreases the can't even think of the word right now, but yes, it slows down the central nervous system. Yes, depresses. Thank you.
No, another thing about it is that it will lower to normal reverse T3, which is really interesting. So somebody's been really driving hard for a while, and their body's kicked in reverse T3, and they go into an adrenal slump. And it takes about 2 weeks of pretty good dosing.
That's great.
Are we gonna get handout for this? Yeah. So what you'll do, what we'll do is we'll give you a website where you can go and download it onto your computers. And we're trying to work on that with the Pat's too. She has to check with the Diabetes Association. But Sally, we can use these. We can have these.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. These will go up on the website. So Heshowu. I still cannot get over the images of Heshowu. I always wonder if, I don't know, somehow it must be altered, but there's images everywhere, and you can see the little rootlets coming off of them. So it's really fascinating. You know, most of the Heshowu that you'll see are tiny little ones, and they don't form into these humanoid kind of looking roots. But the large ones that you'll see people holding up these giant Heshowu roots, they look like they were sculpted. So,
So with both genders.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's great for reproductive issues. It also increases lifespan, and it's been kind of found to have great effects. Especially, it's mostly known for treating prematurely gray hair. It's mixed with shu di and dangui. It's put in a tincture form, and a little bit is drunk every day. But it nourishes blood, replenishes jing, which is the essence, the real strength of the body. Malarial disorders are disorders that are usually infections leading to alternating chills and fever. Moistens the intestines and blocks the bowels. As part of the nourishing part, lowers cholesterol and is good for the heart. It increases both adrenal and thyroid secretions, and it's good for atherosclerosis, angina, coronary heart disorder, hypertension. So I really could have put it in the other area, but since it's a adaptogen that's kind of good for strengthening the body, I put it up here in the first part. So it could go in several different sections.
Do you know the difference between this one and Jiaogulan?
Jiaogulan, no, I'm not familiar.
Okay. Do you know?
Yeah, Jabberlon's kind of like a weaker version of ginseng. It doesn't have a lot of strong uses. The only thing it's really well known for in Western Australia is it can actually repair the dopamine system long term.
Oh, that's interesting.
But it's repair the dopamine system long term.
Because it's supposed to be from polyphenol, but it's so not quite a strong version. Because it increases SOD, superoxide dismutase, so it clears kind of out of the system. So curious about it.
But in Chinese medicine, it's not seen as being
Not
really
as strong.
useful. So usually when you bring it up, they're like, like I've never heard of it. Like most professors that have gone through it,
Yeah.
you wouldn't even know that. So
And so I think, yeah, Wujiapi is the next one. Or say Wujiapi because that's what's used more in TCM. It's used actually more for skin and joint issues. So when someone is sensitive to cold, damp weather and they get joint pain, that's usually in TCM when we think of this herb. But it is a great adaptogen. So it's vasodilative, and it regulates blood glucose. You know, whether so if someone has a cake, it will help them, and then if they take too much insulin to bring the blood sugar back down, it'll also help them. So it'll raise it if it's needed, it'll lower it if is needed. And it does the same thing with the thyroid, at least in terms of what they found with hypertrophy and atrophy from various things that they submitted the rats to. So it regulates and protects red and white blood cell counts. And so it's an immune stimulant, and it inhibits a variety of cancer types. It doubled the lifespan in rats exposed to prolonged radiation, and it is mildly sedative, as most of the adaptogens tend to be that I've seen. So it reduces activation of the adrenal cortex and increases one's sense of well-being.
The tea that we had, was this Luther?
Yes.
Yeah.
Vouch for the vasodilation because my hands are now warm. They were quite cold before.
Nice.
I was wondering about that. I'm like, this is a vasodilating. I go, yes, it is.
So horny goatweed. It is warm, sweet, and acrid. Tonifies the kidneys, strengthens the yang, increases libido, and dispels when cold damp, alleviates joint pain. So it has been found to increase sperm count and reduces hypertension, although it does rebound after usage, so it's not lasting change. It does reduce blood cholesterol and lowers glucose levels and reduces inflammation, and it what we usually say with any of these very strong yang tonifiers is that it must be used with yin nourishers, otherwise it leads to heat in the body. So I'm talking about a lot of these herbs as singular herbs, but in Chinese medicine we usually have very large formulas. 8 herbs, sometimes as many as 12 or 15 herbs. There's a few formulas with just a couple herbs, but generally we like to mix them to prevent any side effects. But it seems it's kind of an interesting balance between when you need to have very exact medicine, when you need to know exactly what a very sensitive and very ill patient is going to be sensitive to or not, and balancing that with using the theory of Chinese medicine that is able to prevent certain side effects by combining different herbs. So I'm very excited about the future of medicine, where it's headed, as we are able to learn more about multiple combinations of herbs and multiple effects of what those herbs are able to produce. So this is an interesting one, the gecko. We use it a lot for asthma, things like that. So it's neutral and salty, as most animal products are. Tonifies lung qi, relieves cough, and it does this strongly by tonifying the kidney yang. So this is able to root the kidney qi so that we're able to, or root the lung qi so we're able to breathe deeply. And it augments blood. It relaxes the bronchi, strongly anti-asthmatic. It's also an immune stimulant, so it increases the white blood cell count. And it also increases production of the adrenocortical hormone. And it also has a reproductive effect, so it increases weight of testicles, it prolongs the estrus period in females. So that's another part of the kidney function, as we would say in Chinese medicine. The next one is Lurong, the deer antler with velvet. And so it's such an interesting herb in that the deer grow there. So they came to, or the deer antlers, they grow so fast every year, and so it's full of all these hormones and nutrients and everything, trying to bring about bone within a year every time. And so to get it at that beginning growth stages, it's just chock full of some amazingly potent things. And it's also one of those herbs that is an animal product, but it doesn't kill the animal to harvest it. So it's nice like that. So it tonifies kidney yang and jing, nourishes blood. And the ren and the chong are strongly related to deep, like contraceptive, reproductive kind of organs. So it, in medium doses, increases cardiac output. In large doses, it dilates blood vessels. It raises testosterone in young and old, but it doesn't seem to have an effect on regular adults. So it heals chronic wounds and ulcerations. And it's a general tonic, increases appetite, improves sleep, increases work capacity. And traditionally, it's used for developmental delay in children. So this is an example of a formula that we use. So this is Shengdi, Shengjiu, Shenyao. Shengdi is Romania, Shengjiu is,
Isn't it? No.
it's one of the fruits. It's the bitter cherry, or the what is that called? It's not a very tasty cherry. The shanyao is the yes, diceuria. So the yam, and fusa, aconite, cinnamon, poria, with the water plantain and tree peony, mudapi. So this warms and tonifies the kidney yang. It's very good for lower back pain, weak legs, not weak legs, cold sensations, pain and cramps in the lower abdomen, dysuria. So it's used, it's an excellent entire formula for endocrine disorders, reproductive disorders, infertility, also all kinds of cardiac issues, so it could have been put in a later section as well.
That's one of my favorites for hot flashes.
Oh, really? I guess it has some of the same herbs as, a lot of the same herbs as Liu Wei, Di Huang Wang. So Buzhong Ichuan has astragalus and ginseng and tractylodes, what is that, angelica, the citrus peel, bupleurum, and shungma. I'm not sure of the other name of it. And it tonifies the middle jiao. This is a formula that's used a lot for any sort of prolapse, whether it's uterine prolapse, stomach prolapse, any sort of. It has several lifting herbs in it with tonifying herbs in it. So it's, in Chinese medicine we say the spleen qi. The spleen is what holds up the organs of the body and keeps them in place. And so this is a strong spleen qi tonifier that helps to lift things back into their place and keep them strong.
For prolapse?
I remember a professor at OCOM, I can't remember who, talking about having used it. And I think they were also using topical. I think it was a uterine prolapse. So.
Is there any contraindications that for Buzhong Ichuan? So this one really helps energy so dramatically.
Well, it's not. It doesn't have many movers in it. So if someone has chi stagnation or kind of, it can lead to more issues, especially if there's kind of like a liver invading spleen sort of picture. So IBS kind of stuff.
I think if someone's cranky, and be careful using it because it might be stimulating of the norepinephrine system a little bit. Because astragalus increases telomeres, so lifespan. So Huang Qi, which is astragalus, is really interesting herb.
Yeah, I was at the anti-aging conference. They had that company that does the astragalus extract.
Yeah.
They say it takes like hundreds of pounds of this extract.
To
Whatever.
get this
But it
little
was like $300 a bottle.
It's kind of out of most people's leagues. You know, if you also give blood transfusions from young people,
Yeah.
it increases telomere
I'm
length.
sure, yeah.
It's going vampire.
You think the red astragalus does that too? Just taking it long term.
Yeah.
Now, astragalus for me, taking it, I get sore joints if I take it too long. It seems to be overstimulating to my immune system.
Yeah, and I get cranky.
Yeah.
I really wanted to take it.
Yeah,
Oh, more
yeah,
energy and
yeah.
telomeres and
Yeah.
it didn't work.
Yeah.
But it was a fun experience.
What did you say that you give to young people?
What?
You say you give to young people? Is that like you give
You take blood from young people and give it to old people, and it increases telomeres. It increases notch. I'll be talking about it with longevity. It was just, it's really weird. That research was done at Stanford. But they did some stuff with astragalus too. And
So it may be antidepressive, but also lead to irritability.
How long would it take, if somebody did have some sort of a prolapse thing going on, how long would you have to take this
That's a good question. And I don't really have an answer for that. I want to go look back through some of the
No, that's okay.
studies.
And, just to provide clarification, please, regulatory effect on intestines, would that be a constipation thing, is that what you mean?
Either way, so
Either way, so
both
it'll-
constipation and diarrhea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll modulate your bowel transit time.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so Tusiza, or Cuscuta, it's neutral, acrid, sweet, tonifies kidney yang and yin, consolidates kidney jing and stops incontinence. It brightens the eyes, stops diarrhea, and also is a good one for wasting, thirsting, or diabetes. It's used for general strengthening, and what is the strongest is the juice of the fresh herb. And this is often decocted in large quantity, and that decoction is drunk over an entire day for several days, for a long time. But generally we have the dried herbs, so it's usually used in combination with other herbs. It's just not as potent.
Is that Perilla?
No, that's
No.
Susu.
Susa?
Susu, yeah. There wasn't too much on it, but I love, I think it's so great if people can grow something in their own yard and use it fresh like that. I think it's really wonderful, so I really wanted to point out the Susa. So Baiju Atractylodes is a very commonly used TCM herb. It is warm, aromatic, acrid, and bitter. Tonifies the spleen and drains dampness. So it releases the exterior a little bit and benefits the eyes, which is an interesting one. I don't usually think of with Baiju that it is good for night blindness, but in particular it's cooked with pig or goat liver, which doesn't sound too good to me, but I'm sure if I was wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also lowers blood glucose levels and may have a synergistic effect with antidiabetic medications. So this is one of the ones that, unlike the Wujiapi, or the one that regulates blood glucose levels and raises it when it's too low and lowers it when it's too high. This one you would have to be careful about taking too much, especially if someone is on something like insulin. And most of them are like this, that they would have a synergistic effect. It increases excretion of sodium and chloride without being a diuretic.
No, I use it for pockets in the intestines. Diverticulitis, and
Interesting.
it will heal diverticulosis and diverticulitis.
Oh, huh. So Zushie is water plantain, and this one is a strong diuretic. It is cold, sweet, and bland, and it regulates water circulation, resolves dampness, clears deficient fire from the heat, since it's kind of cold. It lowers cholesterol and also assists with fatty liver. It is an antihypertensive. It's good for dizziness and vertigo. They found 55 patients reported complete recovery after taking the decoction over 1 to 9 days. It reduces body weight and lowers cholesterol when taken as a tea with Zisuye, Shuchangpu, and Shanja. So the goopy one, it's the root of the goji berry tree. It's cold, sweet, and bland. It cools the blood and relieves steaming bones, which is usually found at night. Steaming bones is a heat coming out. A lot of times there will be, there could be 5 palm heat where there's the palms of the hands, the feet, kind kind of the head and chest area will be very hot. So it's antihypertensive, and it's a kind of a natural ACE inhibitor, and it lowers blood glucose as well. And this is another one that people can kind of just store on their own from their own diet. So of course I always recommend get organic corn, and then store the corn silk in the freezer. And if someone ever has edema issues, they can just pull out some corn silk and make a tea with it. So it treats edema and dysuria, clears damp heat from the liver and gallbladder. So it helps secrete bile, and it also decreases the viscosity of bile, which is an interesting one. So it's antihypertensive, and it contains vitamin K. So Wuling San is an entire formula that we use for water circulation and edema issues. It's very great for acute and chronic nephritis, renal failure, things like this. So it is nephroprotective, which is really wonderful. It decreases blood urea, nitrogen, and creatine, increases the excretion of electrolytes. So of course this is not something you would want to give someone who's on diuretics.
Do you know what flavor it's in the name?
Wuling San? It's in there, or not in that. Oh, this is in a, or this is the formula with Zeshe, Juling, Fuling, Baiju, and Guizhi. So,
Yeah.
and it says that it's good for gestational hypertension. However, we don't recommend using Fuling in pregnancy because it's downward draining. So there's a risk of losing the fetus. So, one interesting thing is that it was found quite effective at relieving nausea and dyspepsia caused by SSRIs without any side effects. So next up is the Salvia danshen. This is a main cardiac herb. We're now moving into the heart herbs. It is cool and bitter, moves blood, dispels blood stasis, cools the blood, nourishes it, and calms the shin. So it's antihypertensive, anticoagulant. In coronary artery disease, it was able to improve the ECG readings in 56% of the patients. But even more than that, 84% found relief of symptoms. The improvement was more likely if there's no history of myocardial infarction. So in China, they do a lot more intravenous injection of herbs. So especially in the heart section, we'll be seeing a lot about that. They definitely are able to use Chinese herbs over there in cases of emergencies. So it's really interesting to see how strong some of these herbs are. So I was able to help people get out of sudden arrest of heartbeat and cardiogenic shock. I was able to rescue them. It's also good for ischemic stroke. And it got a better response. It was the injection intravenously, but it got a better response than pharmaceuticals were able to produce. It has a sedative effect, and it reduces the effects of caffeine. It also regenerates liver cells. So Mudam P is tree peony. It's cool, bitter, and acrid, clears heat and cools blood, and invigorates blood, disperses blood stasis, reduces liver yang rising and liver fire. So this is a great antihypertensive. It increases blood perfusion to the coronary arteries. And it's a lot of these, pretty much all of these blood-moving herbs are ones to avoid in pregnancy. Chuanxiang has to be included in this section. Conidium. It is warm and acrid, moves qi and blood. It also dispels the wind a bit and relieves pain. So it dilates blood vessels, increases blood perfusion to the heart, and is proven effective against towards improving angina. It is antiplatelet and anticoagulant. So it also increases blood perfusion to the brain, reducing swelling, treating cerebral ischemia, Alzheimer's, and migraines. It's protective against radiation as well, and it also has an interesting application for bone spurs, where it can reduce pain within 5 to 10 days. They placed Chuanxiang in a small fabric bag and taped it to the area. They just walked around with it like that for a week, pretty much, and found relief. And it said after 3 months, if it returned, then they just did the same thing again, and it was able to relieve it again.
Get rid of the bones or just the
All it mentions is the pain. Yeah. Maybe Moxa.
yeah.
Hello.
Same thing.
Yeah, acupuncture will get rid of bone spur because it decalcifies calcific nodules. Really nice. What'd you say? Yeah, yeah, I had Epidene's nodules from one year.
Kind of getting close to the end. All right, so we have Fusa, so aconite. It's hot, acrid, and toxic, so it's always prepared. And even though it's already a prepared herb, it is decocted for at least a minimum of 30 minutes. Most of the time it's 60 minutes that it has to be boiled.
I'm not sure I understand what prepared means.
Great.
I'm not a Chinese medicine person. So
Yes, so it has a very specific preparation. The original preparation is a pretty unique one, including harvest time on the summer solstice, so pretty much today, and then it undergoes a rigorous process. I'm not too familiar with the entire process, but it originally included the urine of young boys, and somehow that would help to reduce the toxicity in it. It's not done so much today, so.
Yeah, the point, Futsa is an incredibly toxic herb raw.
Right,
And it's incredibly useful too, so the main thing is you have this elaborate preparation, that way you can actually use it.
Yeah.
Otherwise it would just kill you.
You would kill, yes, I know where.
Just take the main
I know
line.
from the Westerner perspective, aconite is.
Yeah, for sure.
It's usually prepared with either limestone or with ginger, and even though it's already prepared with ginger, oftentimes it's put in formulas with ginger as well. So ginger helps to improve some of its functions of warming while also decreasing the toxicity.
Isn't it also salted, like doesn't spring wind, isn't that salted Futsa? Is that?
Oh, the lime processed is the other one.
Okay, gotcha.
So obviously contraindicated during pregnancy. It increases cardiac output, dilates blood vessels, increases cardiac contractility, increases heart rate, and treats bradycardia. So it reduces inflammation and swelling in joints as well. It stimulates the adrenal cortex, but still has anti-inflammatory actions even in animals with no adrenal glands. So it's not exactly known it's anti-inflammatory, if all the effects of that. And it's also strongly analgesic. So here's the sandalwood, Tanxiang. It is warm, aromatic, and acrid, regulates qi, harmonizes the middle jiao, disperses cold, and relieves pain. And it is used for chest pain from cold and qi stagnation. So there's a formula where it's combined with danshan, with salvia, and also shaoren, which is a warming middle jiao herb. And those three are, I think I put it in here. We'll see if I put it in here. I think I meant to put that formula in here. So sanchi is noto ginseng. It is warm, sweet, slightly bitter. Moves blood, disperses blood stasis at the same time as stopping bleeding. So it's kind of a wonder herb in that it does seemingly opposite effects. It relieves pain and reduces swelling, and is often paired with blood-cooling herbs or yin-nourishing herbs, depending on the cause of bleeding. So sanchi is used in a famous formula of yunnan baiao, which is a powder that soldiers would carry with them, and if they got any sort of deep wound, they would just throw the powder right in there. So it's antibacterial, antifungal. It also stops bleeding and promotes the regeneration of tissues and relieves pain. Although yunnan baiao sure can sting, so at first, but it does relieve pain. I'm going to kind of go quickly through the rest of these. So xie bai is basically the bulb of green onions. It's warm, acrid, and bitter. Frees yang qi. It's very good for stuck, stubborn phlegm, so chronic asthma, things like this. It's also good for obstruction of the chest, angina. It's also antibiotic, and it's regulatory for blood pressure. It effectively and very quickly alleviates wheezing and dyspnea. I think it's very similar to green onions, to scallions. I typically give out, pretty much to every patient, I give out a formula for a chicken congee with ginger and green onions in it. And even for patients with chronic asthma, it can really open things up, break up the phlegm. They'll kind of be expectoring it for the next hour, and then they'll be breathing so much better. So xie bai is a great one. Cordyceps, warm, sweet, tonifies the kidney, tonifies the lungs, stops bleeding, and dissolves phlegm. Stimulates adrenals and enhances macrophage activity, increases sperm count, great for fertility, assists with sleep, it's sedative, decreases heart rate and pressure, antiarrhythmic, lowers cholesterol. So Danshin Yin is the formula. I did include it with the salvia, sandalwood, and shaoran. Shaoran, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's a type of cardamom. So it moves blood, removes stasis, moves qi and stop pain. So it's used for kind of this epigastric pain. It dilates the coronary artery, reduces blood pressure, antiplatelet, and it's quite comparable to aspirin in its effect. Shen Fu Tang is Renshin infusa decocted in water, and ginger has been used here. So the red jujube and ginger are boiled in the water first, and then the Renshin infusa is used. So this is used in China and is administered intravenously into people that are semi-unconscious, that have suffered from cardiac shock, possibly from hemorrhaging, things like this. Shui Fu Juyutang is kind of a go-to formula for blood stasis in the heart, leading to things like angina and hypertension. It was developed by, I'm trying to remember the entire story, but a physician who was trying to find what was causing a certain illness that was completely unrelated, and would find and open up the chest and find all this blood stasis here, but that was actually just a process of the body's laying after death and the blood congealing in the center. But he developed a great formula for blood congealing in the center of the chest. So it's great for angina, for it has antiplatelet, anticoagulant, decreases blood viscosity, reduces blood pressure, regulates blood pressure, and lowers cholesterol. And it's also good for stroke. And it's also been found helpful for schizophrenia, so anything that needs to increase the vascular blood flow to the brain.